Hello, my name is Betty White. I want to tell you about my journey, about how I beat my depression phase with only these 5 daily habits. And when I say beat, I don't mean I knocked it out in one punch, like some superhero. Depression doesn't work that way. It's more like I learned to dance with it, and eventually, I learned the steps well enough that it stopped leading. 2 years ago, I was in the darkest place I'd ever been. I'm talking rock bottom, can't get off bed, what's the point of anything kind of darkness. My therapist later told me I was experiencing major depressive disorder, but back then, I just thought I was a massive scroop who couldn't handle life, like everyone else seemed to. But here's the thing, I'm not here to give you some BS story about how I woke up one day, decided to be happy, and poof, everything was sunshine and rainbows. That's not real life. Real life is messy, complicated, and sometimes it totally sucks. What I am here to tell you is how 5 simple daily habits, and I mean truly simple, not run a marathon every morning, simple, literally saved my life. So, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday in March when everything fell apart. Isn't it always a Tuesday? Like, Mondays get all the hate, but Tuesdays are the real jerks of the week. They sneak up on you when you're already exhausted from pretending Monday was fine. I'd been skating on thin ice for months, maybe even years. You know that thing where you keep telling yourself, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm sign, until the words lose all meaning. Yeah, that was me. I was the queen of I'm fine. Coworkers would ask how I was doing, and I'd flash them my best fake smile and say, living the dream, while internally screaming. That Tuesday, I had a panic attack in the bathroom at work. Not just a little anxiety moment, I'm talking full-blown. Can't breathe, heart racing, convince, time dying, panic attack. I locked myself in a stall for 45 minutes, hyperventilating and crying so hard, I thought I might throw up. When I finally stumbled out, my mascara was running down my face like some deranged raccoon. And Janet, from accounting, took one look at me and said, "Honey, you need to go home." I called in sick the rest of the week. Then, the next week. Then, the week after that. My boss, thankfully, was understanding, but I could hear the concern in her voice when she told me to take care of myself. The problem was, I had no idea how to do that. My apartment became my prison. I'd lie in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was drowning in quicksand. The dishes piled up. The laundry basket overflowed. Mr. Whiskers gave me disappointed looks while had him the same dry food for the millionth day in a row. I stopped answering texts from friends. I stopped going to my book club. I stopped caring about anything. The scariest part, I started having thoughts I'd never had before. Dark thoughts. Thoughts about how maybe everyone would be better off without me. Thoughts about how I could just disappear. And the really terrifying thing was how logical those thoughts seemed in the moment. Like my brain was trying to solve a math problem and kept arriving at the same awful answer. That's when my sister, Rachel, showed up unannounced. She literally used the spare key I'd given her for emergencies and let herself in. She found me in my pajamas at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, surrounded by empty takeout containers, watching the same episode of Friends for the third time because I couldn't muster the energy to change the channel. "Okay, that's it," she said, arms crossed. "We're calling someone. Like, right now." I wanted to argue, to tell her I was fine. There was that word again. But I was so tired. So tired. Instead, I just started crying. And once I started, I couldn't stop. Rachel held me while I ugly cried for what felt like hours. Then she made me take a shower, helped me put on clean clothes, and drove me to an urgent care mental health clinic. I was scared out of my mind, but also I was relieved. Because finally, I was admitting that I needed help. The doctor I saw that day was this older guy named Dr. Martinez. He had kind eyes and didn't make me feel like a crazy person, which was huge. He diagnosed me with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. Fun combo, right? And prescribed me antidepressants. He also strongly recommended I see a therapist regularly. Medication can help, he said, but it's not a magic bullet. You need to build a support system and develop coping strategies. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Sarah Chen twice a week. She was in her 40s, had this calm, no-nonsense vibe, and didn't let me get away with any of my self-deprecating BS. In our third session, after I spent 20 minutes explaining why I was basically the worst person ever, she interrupted me. "Betty, you need to stop beating yourself up. Depression is an illness, not a character flaw. You wouldn't blame yourself for getting the flu, would you?" That hit me hard. I'd spent so long thinking I was just weak or broken or not trying hard enough. The idea that this was an actual medical condition, not a personal failure, was mind-blowing. Over the next few months, Dr. Chen and I worked on a bunch of stuff, cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, identifying my triggers, challenging my negative thought patterns. The meds started helping too, though it took a few tries to find the right one. But here's what really changed everything. The 5 daily habits she helped me develop. These weren't complicated. They weren't time-consuming. They didn't require a gym membership or a complete life overhaul. They were small, manageable things that I could do even on my worst days. And somehow, some way, they added up to something bigger than the sum of their parts. Let me break them down for you. Habit 1. The morning window. M.O.M.N.T. The first habit Dr. Chen introduced was almost stupidly simple. Every morning, within 10 minutes of waking up, I had to stand by a window and look outside for at least 3 minutes. That's it. That was the whole habit. I remember thinking, that's your big solution. Staring out a window like some sad Victorian lady waiting for her lover to return from war. But Dr. Chen explained that it was about exposure to natural light, which helps regulate your circadian rhythm and boosts serotonin production. Plus, it was about creating a routine, a non-negotiable moment that said, I'm starting my day regardless of how I feel. The first week was rough. I'd wake up and immediately want to burrow back under the covers. Getting up felt like trying to move through cement. But I'd made a promise to Dr. Chen, and, more importantly, to myself, that I'd try. So, I'd drag my butt out of bed, shuffle to the window, and stare outside at first. I didn't feel anything. It just felt like wasted time. But around day 10, something shifted. I noticed the way the morning light hit the buildings across the street. I saw a bird, I think it was a robin, hopping around on the sidewalk. I watched my neighbor, an elderly guy named Harold, walking his golden retriever like he did every single morning at 7:15 a.m. There was something weirdly comforting about that consistency. The world was still turning. Life was still happening. I was still here. After a few weeks, I started noticing more things. The way the weather changed. The couple in the apartment building across the way who always ate breakfast together by their window. The gradual shift from winter to spring. These tiny observations became like anchors, I guess. Little reminders that I was connected to something bigger than my own misery. I also started pairing this habit with my coffee. I'd make my morning cup, nothing fancy, just regular drip coffee with way too much cream, and sip it while I stood at the window. It became this sacred little ritual, this gentle way of easing into the day instead of immediately diving into my phone and drowning in emails and social media and news. Cycles designed to make everyone anxious on my worst days, when the depression felt like it was crushing my chest. That window moment was sometimes the only thing I could manage, and that was okay. Dr. Chen kept reminding me, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. So I showed up every single day, even when it felt pointless, especially when it felt pointless. Habit 2. The movement, PRAMEC. Habit number 2 was about movement, but not in a way you'd think. Dr. Chen didn't tell me to join a CrossFit class or start training for a 5K. She knew that just exercise. Advice that everyone loves to throw at depressed people can feel overwhelming and often backfires. Instead, she asked me to make a movement promise to myself every day. I had to move my body intentionally for at least 15 minutes. That was it. 15 minutes. And it could be anything: walking, dancing, stretching, yoga, even just walking up and down my apartment stairs. The key was that it had to be intentional, not just movement that happened incidentally while I was doing other stuff. I'll be honest, I hated this one at first. When you're depressed, your body feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Everything hurts. You're exhausted even though you've done nothing. The idea of exercising felt impossible. But 15 minutes. I could manage 15 minutes. I started with walks around my neighborhood. Nothing ambitious, just around the block. I'd put on my sneakers, grab my headphones, and force myself out the door. Those first few walks were brutal. I felt self-conscious, like everyone was staring at me. They weren't. I felt weak and out of shape. I wanted to turn around and go home. After 5 minutes, I didn't. Something weird started happening, though. After about a week, I noticed I felt slightly less awful after my walks. Not good, exactly, but less trapped in my own head. Dr. Chen explained that exercise releases endorphins and reduces stress hormones like cortisol. But more than the science, I think it was about proving to myself that I could set a goal, even a tiny one, and follow through. As the weeks went on, I started mixing it up. Some days I'd walk. Other days I'd throw on music and dance around my apartment like an idiot. Mr. Whiskers would watch me with absolute disdain, which honestly made it more fun. I found a YouTube channel with gentle yoga videos and started doing those a few times a week. The movement wasn't about weight loss or fitness goals or any of that stuff. It was about reconnecting with my body, which I'd been ignoring for so long. Depression has this way of making you feel disconnected from yourself, like you're just a brain floating in a meat suit. Moving intentionally helped me feel more present, I guess. More like a real person inhabiting a real body. There were still plenty of days when I didn't want to do it. Days when I'd negotiate with myself. Okay, I'll just walk for 5 minutes. If I still feel terrible, I can turn around. But here's the thing. Once I got moving, I almost always ended up doing the full 15 minutes. And sometimes more. The movement promise became non-negotiable. Rain or shine, good day or bad day, I moved. And slowly, steadily, I started feeling stronger. Not just physically, but mentally too. Habit 3. The connection, TXT, habit 3, was the one I resisted the most. Every single day. Not a hey or a thumbs up emoji, a real message. Something that required me to think about someone other than myself for a minute. Dr. Chen explained that Depression is incredibly isolating. When you're in the thick of it, you withdraw from everyone. You convince yourself that people don't actually care, that you're a burden, that they're better off without you. But humans are social creatures. We need connection. And sometimes, when you can't muster the energy to see people in person, a simple text can be a lifeline. I started small. I'd text my sister Rachel, "Thanks for checking on me. I'm doing okay today. Hope you're having a good one." Or my friend Jess, "Saw something that made me think of you. Remember that terrible karaoke night? Still can't believe you sang Total Eclipse of the Heart 3 times." I worried people would think I was weird for randomly reaching out. But the responses I got were really nice. People seemed genuinely happy to hear from me. Rachel would send back paragraphs about her day. Jess would reply with laughing emojis and suggest we hang out soon. My mom, who'd been worried sick about me, would send strings of heart emojis and tell me she loved me. Here's what surprised me. Sending those texts made me feel better. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, even when my brain was trying to convince me otherwise. It kept me tethered to the outside world, to relationships that mattered, to people who actually gave a damn. I started branching out beyond my inner circle. I'd text old college friends I hadn't talked to in years. I'd reach out to coworkers just to check in. I even started texting my elderly neighbor, Harold. I'd gotten his number after he helped me carry groceries one day to ask how his dog was doing. The connections I rebuilt through these daily texts became crucial to my recovery. They reminded me that I had a value, that people wanted me in their lives, that I wasn't the burden I'd convinced myself I was. And on my darkest days, when the depression was whispering lies about how nobody cared, I could scroll through those text conversations and see concrete evidence that it was wrong. This habit also forced me to think about other people's lives, which gave me a break from the constant loop of negative thoughts about myself. It's hard to stay completely self-absorbed when you're checking in on your friend's new job, or your cousin's pregnancy, or your neighbor's arthritis. Did it cure my depression? Hell no. But did it make me feel less alone? Absolutely. Habit 4. The brain duwemp habit 4 was something Dr. Chen called the brain dump, and it became my secret weapon. Every evening before bed, I had to write down my thoughts for 10 minutes. No rules, no structure, no worrying about grammar or spelling or whether it made sense. Just pure, unfiltered brain vomit onto paper. I bought a cheap notebook from Target. Nothing fancy, just a spiral-bound one with a purple cover, and started writing. That first night, I stared at the blank page for 5 minutes before I finally just wrote, "I don't know what to write. This feels stupid. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. But Dr. Chen had emphasized, keep the pen moving. Even if your writing this is dumb over and over, keep writing. So I did. What happened over the next few weeks was kind of incredible. All these thoughts and feelings I'd been bottling up started pouring out. I wrote about how angry I was at myself for getting depressed. I wrote about my fears that I'd never get better. I wrote about embarrassing memories from middle school that my brain randomly decided to torture me with at 2 a.m. I wrote about how much I missed feeling normal, even though I wasn't sure what normal even meant anymore. The brain dump became this safe space where I could be completely honest without worrying about burdening anyone or saying the wrong thing. I didn't have to perform or pretend or filter. I could be messy and ugly and real. Some nights I'd cry while writing. Other nights I'd get so angry that my handwriting became illegible scribbles. But I always felt lighter afterward, like I'd transferred some of the weight from my brain onto the page. Dr. Chen explained that this practice, which is basically a form of expressive writing or journaling, has been shown in studies to reduce anxiety, improve mood, and help process difficult emotions. But the real magic wasn't in the science. It was in finally giving myself permission to feel everything without judgment. I also started noticing patterns in my brain dumps. Certain anxieties would show up repeatedly. Specific triggers would send me spiraling. Particular thought distortions would pop up over and over. Hello. Catastrophizing and all or nothing thinking. Being able to identify these patterns made them less scary and easier to challenge. Sometimes I'd go back and read old entries, and I'd be struck by how far I'd come. That gut-wrenching pain I'd written about 3 months ago, it had lessened. That seemingly insurmountable problem from last week, I'd figured it out. The brain dump became this tangible record of my progress, proof that even though recovery wasn't linear, I was moving forward. The 10-minute limit was important too. It made the task feel manageable, not like some endless commitment. On good days, I'd often write longer because I was on a roll. On bad days, I'd watch the clock and stop right at 10 minutes. Both were okay. Asterisk. This habit became my nightly ritual, as essential as brushing my teeth. It helped quiet my racing thoughts before bed, which meant I actually started sleeping better. And better sleep meant more energy to tackle the next day. Funny how all these things connected, like dominoes, in the most positive way. Habit 5. The gratitude, moment. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Gratitude practice. Really, that's so cliché. Trust me, I rolled my eyes to when Dr. Chen first brought it up. I'd seen all those Instagram posts about gratitude journals and manifesting abundance, and it all felt like toxic positivity BS designed to make people feel bad for having legitimate problems. But Dr. Chung's version was different. She didn't ask me to be grateful for my depression or find some silver lining in my suffering. She didn't tell me to minimize my pain or pretend everything was fine. Instead, she asked me to notice one small, concrete thing each day that didn't totally suck. That was it. One thing. And it could be tiny. Ridiculously tiny. The first day, I couldn't think of anything. I sat there, frustrated, while Dr. Chen waited patiently. Finally, I said, I guess I'm glad Mr. Whiskers exists. Because at least I have to get up to feed him, even when I don't want to get up for myself. Dr. Chen smiled. That counts. The next day, I noticed that my coffee was the perfect temperature. The day after that, I was grateful for my fuzzy socks. Then it was the fact that my favorite show had a new episode available. Small stuff, mundane stuff, but real stuff. Here's what I learned. Gratitude doesn't mean ignoring your pain or pretending everything's great. It means training your brain to notice the okay moments alongside the terrible ones. Depression has this way of filtering out anything positive, like wearing glasses that only show you the bad stuff. This habit was about slowly adjusting those glasses so I could see a more complete picture. I started incorporating my gratitude moment into the brain dump. I'd do all my emotional vomiting, and then, right at the end, I'd write, "Today I'm grateful for ... Some days it was easier than others. Some days I really had to dig deep. But I always found something. The impacts were subtle at first. I started noticing more good moments throughout my day, not because life suddenly got better, but because I was finally paying attention to them. The way the barista at Starbucks remembered my order and had it ready before I even asked. The perfect bite of chocolate cake. A funny text from a friend. Sunshine on my face during my afternoon walk. These moments didn't cancel out the depression or make everything okay. But they did give me something to hold on to when things got dark. They reminded me that life wasn't 100% awful, even when it felt that way. They created these tiny pockets of light in the darkness. Over time, the gratitude habit changed how I related to my own thoughts. Instead of being completely consumed by negative spirals, I had this other channel in my brain that was looking for things to appreciate. It didn't eliminate the negative thoughts. They were still there. Trust me, but it gave them some competition. Dr. Chen warned me that this habit might feel fake at first, and she was right. For weeks, it felt like I was just going through the motions, checking a box. But somewhere along the way, it became real. The noticing became automatic. The appreciation became genuine. And I found myself smiling more, even on tough days. Part 3. The long game years, the thing nobody tells you about recovery. It's boring as hell. There's no dramatic montage where you go from broken to fixed in 3 minutes while inspirational music plays. It's the same simple habits, day after day, week after week, month after month. It's showing up for yourself even when you don't see immediate results. It's trusting the process when your brain is screaming that nothing will ever change. About 6 months into practicing these 5 daily habits, I had a major setback. I got passed over for a promotion at work. My apartment flooded from a burst pipe upstairs, and I got into a huge fight with my sister about something stupid. In 1 week, everything I'd built felt like it was crumbling. The depression came roaring back. Not as bad as before, but bad enough that I spent an entire Saturday in bed, convinced that all my progress had been an illusion, and I was right back where I started. But here's what was different, even in the middle of that darkness. I stood at my window that Sunday morning, even though it felt pointless. I took a walk around the block, even though I wanted to stay in bed. I texted my friend Maria, even though I didn't feel like connecting. I wrote in my journal, even though all I could write was everything sucks. I found something to be grateful for. Even though I had to really search, it was the fact that Harold's dog had made me smile when I saw them on my walk. And you know what? It didn't fix everything immediately. I still felt like crap. But I didn't spiral as far or as fast as I would have before. The habits were like a safety net, catching me before I hit rock bottom again. Dr. Chen later explained that this was actually a sign of progress. Recovery isn't about never having bad days, she said. It's about having the tools to handle them when they come. It's about resilience, not perfection. That perspective shift was huge for me. I'd been measuring my success by whether I felt happy, which is a terrible metric because nobody feels happy all the time. But when I started measuring success by whether I was showing up and doing my habits, regardless of how I felt, that was something I could actually control. By the 1-year mark, the habits had become so ingrained that I didn't even think about them anymore. They were just part of my life, like showering or making coffee. I'd rebuilt my routine, and with it, I'd rebuilt myself. My relationships got stronger because I was actually present and engaged instead of just pretending to be okay. My work performance improved because I could focus again. My apartment stayed cleaner because I had the energy to maintain it. I started going back to my book club, adopted a second cat. Mr. Whiskers needed a friend, obviously, and even went on a few dates, mostly disasters. But hey, I was trying. The depression didn't completely disappear. I still have hard days. I still take medication. I still see Dr. Chen regularly, but the difference is that now I have these tools, these habits that keep me grounded. They're my foundation. The thing I can come back to when everything else feels chaotic. Part 4. What I've led R&Ed. Someone told me 2 years ago that standing at a window, going for walks, sending texts, writing in a journal, and practicing gratitude would save my life. I would have laughed in their face. These habits seem so simple, almost stupidly simple. But that's exactly why they work. When you're depressed, everything feels overwhelming. The idea of making big life changes or completely overhauling your routine is paralyzing. But small things, manageable things, things you can do even on your worst days, those you can handle. These 5 habits worked for me because they were consistent. I did them every single day, no matter what. Consistency builds trust with yourself. Achievable, even on my darkest days. I could manage 15 minutes of movement or 3 minutes at a window. They didn't require Herculean effort. Cumulative, each habit built on the others. Better sleep from journaling meant more energy for movement. More movement meant better mood for connection. Better connections meant more to be grateful for. Forgiving if I missed a day, which happened sometimes. I just picked back up the next day. No guilt, no shame, no I've ruined everything, spirals, personal. These were my habits, tailored to what I needed. Your 5 habits might look totally different, and that's okay. The point is finding what works for you. I also learned that asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage. Going to therapy, taking medication, leaning on my sister when I needed support. None of that made me a failure. It made me someone who was willing to fight for her own life. I learned that progress isn't linear. You'll have setbacks. You'll have days that feel like you're back at square one. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. I learned that you can't hate yourself into a version of yourself you'll love. Self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a friend, is essential. When I stopped beating myself up for being depressed and started treating myself with gentleness, everything started to shift. Most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. The fact that I'm sitting here, writing this, sharing my story. 2 years ago, I didn't think I'd make it. I genuinely didn't believe I had a future worth living, but I was wrong. So here I am, 2 years later. Sitting at my window, it's become my favorite spot in the apartment, with Mr. Whiskers and his new friend, Miss Perfect, curled up nearby. Drinking my morning coffee. Watching Harold walk his dog like he does every single day at 7:15 a.m. I'm not cured. I don't think depression works that way, but I'm managing. I'm functioning. I'm actually genuinely enjoying my life more days than not. And on the days when I'm not enjoying it, I have my 5 habits to fall back on. If you're reading this and you're in that dark place I was in, if you're lying in bed right now, wondering if it's worth getting up, if anything will ever feel okay again, I want you to know something. It can get better. Not perfect, not magical, but better. Genuinely, substantially better. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just start with one tiny habit. Stand at a window for 3 minutes. Move your body for 15. Send one text to someone who cares about you. Write down your thoughts for 10 minutes. Notice one small thing that doesn't completely suck. Then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Will it be easy? Hell no. Will it be instant? Absolutely not. Will there be days when you don't see the point and want to give up? For sure. But I promise you, from someone who's been there, who's walked through that fire and came out the other side, it's worth it. You're worth it. These 5 daily habits saved my life. They might not be the exact habits that save yours, but the principle is the same. Small, consistent actions compound over time into massive change. You don't need a complete transformation overnight. You just need to show up for yourself, one day at a time, one habit at a time. I'm not special. I don't have some unique strength or resilience that you don't have. I'm just a regular person who decided that maybe, possibly, life might be worth fighting for. And then I kept making that decision every single day until it became easier, until it became true. So that's my story. That's how I beat depression with 5 daily habits. It's messy and imperfect and ongoing, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of myself for not giving up, even when every fiber of my being wanted to. If you take nothing else from this, take this. You are not alone. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not a burden. You are a human being dealing with a very real illness, and you deserve support, compassion, and hope. Start small. Be patient with yourself. Keep showing up. And maybe, just maybe, you'll look back in 2 years and be amazed at how far you've come. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go stand at a window or something